All right. I am here with Alicia Salvatierra. Yes. We just,
Salvatierra.
God, we just went over this and I already screwed it up. Salvatierra. Yeah. Where do you do contract to close?
I do contract to close in the state of Phoenix is where I'm physically located. But I have East Coast to West Coast agents.
Okay. And how long have you been doing contract to close?
So I started doing contract to close before I had graduated high school was my initial experience. And then I kind of derailed a little bit from real estate when it got really ugly in 2008, 2009. And then I came back to it as a stay-at-home mom with my 4 kids, probably within the last year and a half.
Okay. Wow. Before high school. That's interesting.
I know.
Yeah, I haven't even been doing it that long.
Yeah, I did it. I was 16 and a half, and I had just gotten my worker's permit. And I had signed up with a real estate company, and I was doing a Girl Friday, and I hated that. And so then they went ahead and transferred me over to doing their coordination for their files for the 3 different brokerages.
Cool.
It was a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, especially at 16. There's no way. I don't even know what I was doing
No.
at 16. Certainly not something I'm going to say on video. Um, okay, and you're independent, correct?
Yes, currently now I am independent. Yes.
Okay. And what's the name of your company?
It is Top Notch Transaction Management, but we specialize in contract to close.
Awesome. I love that. Um, and what what got you into doing this? Like what piqued your interest about being an independent contract to close coordinator?
So I am very much a type A personality where I like structure and I like things to be organized and I like things to go a certain way. And I had my real estate license in California from 2007 to 2011. And it was definitely harder to organize things that way because you're running around with clients and you're trying to get deals closed. And there's not a whole lot of detail being paid attention to on the back end of it. And I realized that detail is what I love. My love is in the details of, you know, dates and deadlines, and that is really where I like to excel in things and just show my strength. And so it's always been a niche that I've loved. I thought maybe selling real estate would definitely, help that. But I don't feel as in love with being an agent as I do with being a transaction coordinator. It's the best of both worlds. You get to do real estate and see all of the real estate things, but then you also get to deal on the backside and make the transaction happen.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That was kind of the same thing that happened with me was just in terms of I really liked, well, let's just say this. I'm far too high D a personality to go show a buyer 10 homes.
Oh, yeah.
By the third home, I'm like, hey, you need to make a decision. And that's just not how it works.
No.
So what software do you use for your contract to close?
I don't use any software. I
Okay,
use Google Calendar and I use an Excel spreadsheet.
awesome.
And so my agents, I have an agent who uses SkySlope
Mhm.
and I have an agent who uses Dotloop. Those, I'm not really particularly married to one or the other. I'm very old fashioned. Like I said, I came into this in 2006, 2007. And when I started doing full-time transaction coordinating, it was easier to just use what I had. And in that moment, I was very proficient in Excel and Google Calendar. Practically everybody has it. Those are my go-tos. That's what keeps me together. And then I just use a checklist that I created myself that was geared towards what my agents needed for their particular state.
Okay. Um, what are some obstacles you have had to overcome uh, since starting this business?
I think the biggest obstacle is just growing. Growing my business, although, I feel like I'm a pretty stand-up transaction coordinator, I've realized that agents become very possessive when they like what you do and they appreciate how you work, they're not so easy to share. Like, hey, my transaction coordinator is amazing. Here's her information. So I've found that that's my biggest obstacle is like, you guys don't realize like this is my business. Like this is how I survive. And the more you want to share that information, the better my business is.
Yeah.
But it's almost like they feel like if they take away and they share my information, that they're not going to get the same quality of service.
Yeah.
It's the craziest thing.
Yeah. Start sending them pictures of your kids with like dirty faces and
Yeah.
tag. Like, I need more business. I need more business. No. Yeah, that is, I have found that as well. It's interesting that agents will either be your biggest advocates or just super
Hmm.
selfish. Yeah.
Exactly.
What about in the industry, in the transaction management industry, as far as, there are a lot of companies. When you and I got into this, there was literally no one doing contract to close
No.
locally.
Mm-mm.
And since that time, I mean, now there's 1,000 of us everywhere.
Yeah.
What are some obstacles you have found just within the industry itself?
Say my biggest obstacle within our own industry is just that the the division. Everybody feels like, oh, it's competition between you and I, and in reality, that's not the case. I believe that, each one of us can learn something from a different way of transaction coordinating from somebody else who's been doing it longer, or somebody who's just getting started and realize that this is a shortcut that works for me. And I've found that within our own industry, we have people who are creating more division than university. Like, then, everybody's on the same page and we can grow more together. I feel like everybody's like, oh no, this is mine and don't touch it and don't look at it and I can't share it. And that, I think that's the most painful thing to get over as, we're growing and we're learning more, is just the fact of like, there is plenty of real estate business. And I realize that real estate agents themselves may feel like that, but I don't think as transaction coordinators, we necessarily have to feel like that, because I seriously feel like there's so much business, especially right now. There is a ton of transactions flying back and forth. And I think that we could use that to learn from each other and to grow rather than cut each other off at the knees.
Amen. Yeah, it's so in San Antonio, where I am, San Antonio, Texas, there are 32,000 agents.
Mm-hmm.
If every agent did one transaction, that's 32,000 transactions. If I got 1% of 32,000 transactions, I could not deal with that volume.
Right.
So
Right.
just to put that into perspective, you are so right. There in every city, there is enough business for a whole gaggle of us to be operating.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. There
So,
really is.
and the real estate industry just kind of does this, the upside down funnel. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
um, real estate is something that never goes away. It is always consistent. So that is a great, great point.
Yeah.
Unity versus division. I really like that. Um, what um, what are some cons to doing contract to close? We'll do the cons
Um,
first and then the pros.
The cons, I would definitely say that doing contract to close, sometimes you get real estate agents who don't believe in, that you have a set schedule, that you don't work as much as they do. I would say that'd be my biggest con, is because I do work from my office in my home, that sometimes I don't know when to shut it off. Like, okay, yeah, we're busy and everybody got, so many contracts, and I get that. That's my biggest con, is that I don't know when to shut off. I was working yesterday, I was working Sunday, I was working Saturday. And it's not necessarily the length of time that I work, it's just more that I'm taking that hour, 2 hours away from my family, and I'm not focused in there because I'm trying to be like, okay, yeah, I just got to do this really quick. That's our infamous line, right? I'm just going to do this really quick. And then an hour and a half later, you're like, shoot, I'm still working. Like, I got to get off of here and go.
Yeah.
Um, That would probably be my biggest con, is just, not knowing when to turn it off and feeling guilty about putting my foot down of like, hey, you know what? I'm only going to work for an hour today and then I'm off the rest of the day.
Yeah, that is boundaries are a huge coaching thing that I do with my clients is boundaries. Uh,
Yeah.
because if you do not set boundaries, agents will run all over you.
Yep.
It's funny. It's not that they're malicious. Um,
No.
it's just they want stuff done. And if they think that you're going
Yeah.
to do it at 10 o'clock at night, they'll text you and ask you to do it at 10 o'clock at night.
Exactly. Or, you get that, hey, could you just do this for me really quick? And it's like, no, I actually can't because, I don't work Saturdays and Sundays. So the answer would be no.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, boundaries is a big one. We should do a whole segment on boundaries one time with like 6 of us. How do you set boundaries? Um, all right, what would be one of the biggest pros to doing what you do?
The biggest pro that I have seen over doing this as a mom of four for the past year and a half is that I haven't missed anything. I haven't missed a soccer game or a soccer practice, and I haven't had to feel guilty about taking, time away from work, quote unquote, like I did in the corporate world. In the corporate world, I felt, super guilty because I asked for a Monday off because I needed to do something with my kids or with my family, or we were going on vacation or whatever the case was. That would be my biggest pro, on top of there's no cap. Like I'm not hitting. I can make as much as I want. I can make as little as I want. There's no shackle. Like there's definitely room to grow. It's a small business to start off with, but there's nobody telling me like, oh yeah, you can't go any higher than this. And so, as a mom of four girls,
Oh my,
I definitely think that that is super important to show them like, hey, you can be a mom, you can be a wife, you can be a caretaker, and you can be a housemaid, and you can do all of these things and still run a successful business while doing all of those things if you decide that you want to be serious about something that you're passionate about and make it a business.
wow. That was really, really good. Yeah, the two things you hit on, one of them is really near and dear to my heart, and that is the law of the lid. Um,
Mm-hmm.
when I remember when I was an employee in 2004, and I read the 21 Laws of Leadership, and one of them was the law of the lid, where John Maxwell says that as an employee, there's only so much you can make, and then you hit that lid, and you cannot go past that lid. And
Exactly.
and that really scared me because I was a single dad um, who had a 6-year-old daughter and was like, okay, so this is all I can do. This is it.
Mm-hmm.
I can never
Mm-hmm.
make any more than this. And I was at someone else's beck and call. If I was sick, that was a detriment to my job. I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
was just a lot that really
Yeah.
hit me. And you're right. In our industry, running our own business as an entrepreneur, no one can tell you any of that.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
It is up to you and what you want to do.
Yeah, it really
There's
is.
a lot of freedom in that. And it is a beautiful thing to know that you can make those soccer games and practices
Mm-hmm.
um, and wipe the tears from the eyes
Mm-hmm.
when there's a fight or whatever. Yeah.
Or even in an emergency doctor's appointment that you have to, hey, you know what, you get that call from daycare, hey, they, hit their head or whatever. I don't have to go ask anybody for permission to say, hey, can I leave? Can I leave to go take care of my own child? Like, we don't realize that limited mentality of how much we give that freedom to somebody else to dictate, hey, yeah, you know what? No, you can't leave because we don't have anybody to cover you right now. And it's like, are you out of your mind? I need to go take care of my child. And that was one of the biggest struggles. When I found out I was pregnant with my fourth child, I looked at my husband and I go, I'm not doing this anymore. I am not doing this anymore because I know what comes with having another child. It's doctor's appointments. It's, things like that. And that limited capacity of what I was able to do and be there for, I wasn't doing it anymore. I looked him dead in the face. I said, I'm not doing this anymore.
Wow.
And so now going back into business for myself, full time, I do this from home, and my girls see me and they understand, like, oh, mom's working. And it allows me so much more freedom, because if we want to pick up and go, up north in northern Arizona for the weekend, we can do that. I don't have to come back to work because I work off of my computer. I work off of my phone. I'm not missing anything. Nobody knows that I'm out of town. And yet still I'm doing all of these things.
Yep. Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Before COVID, there's I call it the bouncy house. It's a little inflatable park thing. And I would take my boys to the gym with me at 8:30, and the bouncy house opened at 10, and we would go to the bouncy house at 10, and I had a table that I worked from, and the bouncy house employees knew I was going to be there every day, and that's what we did. And I would work a little bit and play with my boys, and
Exactly.
I mean, who else can say they have that kind of freedom? It's
nobody. And the thing about it, not even real estate agents. Real estate agents can't even say that they have that freedom.
nope.
And that was one of the turning points of like, yeah, I don't necessarily want to be an agent. At some point, I want to have a brokerage, but it's doing the exact same thing that I'm doing now. It's the compliance. It's making sure that everybody's in line, kind of rallying the troops around like, hey, that's not how we do things, and we need to get back in order.
Yeah.
But those are 5-year plans. Those are 5-year plans. I'm still raising babies.
Yeah. That's awesome. And so if you could give a piece of advice to anyone getting into the business, what would that piece of advice be?
I think the main piece of advice, well, there's actually, it's 2 parts. And one of them I'm actually going to steal from you. The first thing is get your systems in place. Put whatever it is that you think is the most priority for what you're going to start doing, which is deadlines, which is timelines, which is disclose, like get familiar with those things. If you're going to do it coast to coast, ask somebody on some social media platform if they can send you contracts. So you can read and understand what you're doing, so then you can have a little bit of background. Don't wait until you're in the middle of a transaction to be like, oh, well, how do I, who do I ask and where do I go? And then the other thing is, believe that you are not working for the agent. I think that was a huge turning point for me in my business, when it's like, no, we're joining forces. This is a partnership, because I'm not working for you. Our goal, and it's a common goal, is to make sure that this works for the client. We want to make sure that the client is the one who's going to be able to get to the finish line. You're not my boss, and I don't work for you. And that was one of the things that you have to go in with, that mentality of like, hey, I'm not your boss, because it's very easy for me to feel bad about like, oh, dang, I should help them with that listing. No, that I shouldn't help them with that listing, because I'm a contract to close. I'm not listing to close. And once you have that mentality of like, this is a partnership, it's not, I work for you, you're not my boss, this isn't an employer situation, you realize it's easier to put your foot down and set those boundaries and say, hey, you know what, this is what I offer. This is my price. If you're okay with that, great, we'll have a great partnership. If you're not, I'm not who you're looking for. And being okay with saying, I'm not who you're looking for, because there's a lot of people who get confused because it's business, because it's money that they have to sacrifice their bottom line or their boundary in order to keep that money in their pocket.
Man, there's a lot of wisdom in what you just rattled off, and I really hope that any newcomers or even some seasoned TCs listen to what you just said, because you hit on boundaries, which is important. You hit on expectations, which is important. You hit on the fact that this is a partnership and not an employee-employer relationship. That is super important. There was a lot in there that is really good. So I hope someone listens to that and then rewinds it and listens to it again, because I could learn something from that. Okay, well, awesome. I appreciate it. That's really all I wanted to do, was just kind of, we're going to start doing these probably a couple times a month, and and just get everybody out there and everybody kind of talking about what they do and how we can build the
Yeah.
community, because it's
Hmm.
super important.
It really is. It really is. And having transaction coordinator associates and having friends that are transaction coordinators is probably your biggest, it's going to be one of those things that's really going to make or break your business, because there's so many times where you get into a pickle and you don't want to ask an agent. Sometimes asking an agent is okay, but if it's your only agent that you have and you're asking them how to do things that as a transaction coordinator they
Yeah,
hired you for, it kind of
yeah,
seems iffy. But if you have other transaction coordinators that you can reach out to and you can say, hey, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Like, how do I fix this? And they could say, hey, you know what? I mean, I just had a lady the other day who, she's in Virginia. She got her first contract in California. And she goes, is there anybody who has 5 minutes? And you know what? I think in our industry, it's so, oh, I'm too busy. Oh, I can't help them. They're going to steal my business. And so I called her and I said, hey, what do you need help with? And she goes, I don't know how to read the contract. I go, okay, this page, and here's where you can find that. And here's where this is what you're supposed to be taking care of. This is how you do this. She goes, oh my God, thank you so much. And that thank you reminded me of like when I got in the business and I literally did not know anything.
yep,
And it was very, very scarce what I could find on the internet. Or, people want to sell boot camps and people want to do all this stuff. And it's like, you don't need that. You need somebody to take your hand and say, this is how you do it. And if you make a mistake, it's okay. Nobody's going to die. It's fine.
yep,
And then you keep going.
yeah. Paying it forward for
Hmm.
what you've been given is such an amazing thing to do. And unfortunately, some of the leadership in our community doesn't want to cultivate that. They would rather
Hmm.
cultivate a fear mentality so that you sign up for organizations and junk
Hmm.
that I personally don't think that you need.
I don't either. Yeah.
I agree with you. I think someone just coming along and saying, hey, let me help you with this one.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
all it takes, because once
It
someone
really
gains
is.
a little traction and some confidence, they can accomplish anything.
Yeah. Yep.
Um,
And that's all
and
it takes.
and we all know, when you're beginning, you don't really have much money when you're starting out.
Right. 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 I literally started off with $50 in my bank. Like that was it. That was all I had. We were living off of one income. We were already a family of 6. Like I had 0 income.
Yeah.
But I had an agent who was in South Carolina who said, hey, you know what? Your resume looks like you know what you're doing. I'm going to try you out. They tried me out and they loved me. You're going to have agents who love you. You're going to have agents who don't.
Yep. And
It,
that's
it,
okay.
and that's okay. And that's okay. You pick up your pieces and you keep going.
Yep.
But it's those agents who give you a chance and say, hey, you know what? If you don't know what you're doing, but I really need a TC, I'll help you. And then you gather your community around you and you say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you guys help me? Because I don't know how to read these contracts. What's our
That's it.
timeline look like? What is this?
Yeah. Fake it till you make it,
Exactly.
and use the community as a resource. That's beautiful. I think that's great.
Exactly.
Okay. Air high five.
Air high five. Woohoo!
All right. I'm gonna post this on a couple sites pretty soon.
Perfect.
And I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dustin. I appreciate it as well.
All
Have a
right.
good afternoon.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.